The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace gardens as Kate stood by the window of her private study. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the letter that had arrived just hours before. The official seal of the palace looked heavy in her delicate fingers, but the words inside felt even heavier on her heart. William had been away for 3 weeks on official duties across Europe. What started as a routine diplomatic tour had stretched longer than anyone expected. Phone calls became shorter. Messages grew distant, and Kate found herself wondering if the man she married was slowly becoming a stranger. The letter was from the palace officials, informing her of new protocols that would change everything about their family life. More responsibilities, more time apart, more public appearances without each other. Kate read the words again, hoping she had misunderstood something, but the meaning remained crystal clear. She walked to the kitchen where the children were having breakfast. George was reading a book about airplanes while Charlotte played with her food, making patterns with her cereal. Louis was babbling happily in his high chair, completely unaware that their world might be about to change. "Mummy, when is Daddy coming home?" Charlotte asked, looking up with her bright blue eyes that reminded Kate so much of William. Kate forced a smile and smoothed her daughter's hair. "Soon, sweetheart, very soon." But even as she said the words, Kate wondered if things would ever be the same when William returned. The demands of royal life seemed to be pulling them in different directions, and she wasn't sure how much more stretching their relationship could handle. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was William's private secretary, calling to inform her that his return had been delayed by another week. Kate listened politely, thanked him for the call, and hung up feeling more alone than ever. That afternoon, Kate took the children to the park. She watched them play on the swings and slides, their laughter filling the air around them. Other mothers chatted nearby, discussing normal things like school projects and weekend plans. Kate envied their simplicity, their freedom to make choices without consulting protocol officers and security teams. As they walked back to the palace, Kate noticed Camilla's car pulling into the courtyard. Through the window, she could see the queen consort speaking animatedly on her phone, gesturing with her free hand. Something about the scene made Kate feel uneasy, though she couldn't quite put her finger on why. That evening, after putting the children to bed, Kate sat in the drawing room with a cup of tea. The palace felt enormous and empty around her. She thought about calling William, but the time difference meant he would be in meetings. Besides, their recent conversations had felt strained and formal, more like business discussions than intimate talks between husband and wife. She picked up her phone several times, starting to type messages to William, then deleting them before sending. What could she say? That she was lonely? That she was starting to question whether their marriage could survive the constant pressure of royal duties? That she sometimes wondered if he missed her at all? The next morning brought unexpected news. William's tour had been cut short due to a minor diplomatic incident, and he would be returning that evening. Kate felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. She spent the day preparing for his return, making sure his favorite dinner was ready, and that the children were excited to see their father. But when William walked through the door that night, something was different. His smile seemed forced, his embrace felt distant, and his eyes held a tiredness that went beyond physical exhaustion. They went through the motions of a happy reunion, but Kate could sense the invisible wall that had grown between them during his absence. After dinner, when the children were finally asleep, they sat together in their private sitting room. The silence stretched between them like an ocean. William scrolled through papers and emails while Kate pretended to read a magazine. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly, marking each uncomfortable moment. "How was the tour?" Kate finally asked, setting down her magazine. "Productive," William replied without looking up from his papers. "We accomplished what we set out to do." Kate waited for him to ask about her time, about the children, about anything that showed he cared about their life together. But William continued reading, and Kate realized that somewhere along the way, they had stopped being partners and had become polite strangers sharing the same house. The next few days followed the same pattern. William attended meetings and fulfilled his duties while Kate managed the household and cared for the children. They spoke when necessary, but the easy conversation and shared laughter that had once defined their relationship seemed to have disappeared. Kate began to notice other changes too. William spent more time on the phone with palace officials, often stepping out of the room when calls came in. He worked later into the evening and seemed preoccupied even during family time. When she tried to bring up her concerns about the new protocols mentioned in the letter, he brushed off her worries with vague reassurances that everything would work out fine. One afternoon, while William was at a charity event, Camilla came to visit. She arrived unannounced, sweeping into the palace with her usual confidence. Kate greeted her politely, offering tea and making small talk about the children and the weather, but as their conversation continued, Kate began to sense an undercurrent she hadn't noticed before. Camilla's questions seemed carefully chosen, designed to probe Kate's feelings about royal life and her commitment to her duties. There were subtle comments about the sacrifices required of royal wives and the importance of putting duty before personal happiness. "The royal family has weathered many storms," Camilla said, stirring her tea slowly. "Those who adapt and embrace their role find fulfillment. Those who resist often find themselves quite miserable." Kate nodded politely, but something in Camilla's tone made her feel like she was being tested or measured in some way. After Camilla left, Kate couldn't shake the feeling that there were conversations happening about her future that she wasn't part of. That night, Kate tried to talk to William about her growing concerns. She mentioned feeling isolated, worried about the changes coming to their family life, and uncertain about how to balance being a mother with the increasing demands of royal duty. William listened with the same polite attention he gave to briefings from his staff. When she finished speaking, he offered generic reassurances about things getting better with time and the importance of adapting to their roles. It felt like talking to a palace spokesperson rather than her husband. As Kate lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while William slept beside her, she realized that the man she had fallen in love with was disappearing behind layers of royal protocol and duty. The William who used to make her laugh until her sides hurt, who would surprise her with small romantic gestures, who used to see her as his partner in everything, seemed to have been replaced by someone who saw her as just another responsibility to manage. The thought that terrified her most was that she wasn't sure if the old William was still in there somewhere, waiting to break free, or if he was gone forever, consumed by the weight of his destiny. And if he was gone, Kate wondered what that meant for their marriage, their children, and the future she had thought they would build together. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in March. Kate woke to find William already dressed and preparing to leave for another series of engagements. His schedule, which used to include family time and moments for just the two of them, had become a relentless stream of obligations that left no room for their relationship. "What time will you be home?" Kate asked, trying to keep her voice light as she watched him adjust his tie. "Late. There's a dinner with the Commonwealth representatives, then a briefing about next month's tour." William's response was automatic, delivered without even looking at her. "That's the fourth night this week," Kate said quietly. William finally turned to face her, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of the man she married. "I know it's difficult, Kate, but this is important. The family needs. What about what our family needs?" The words came out sharper than Kate intended. "What about what the children need? What about what I need?" William's expression hardened again, the brief glimpse of her husband disappearing behind his royal mask. "This is who we are, Kate. This is what we signed up for." "No," Kate said, standing up from the bed. "This isn't what I signed up for. I signed up to be your wife, your partner, not to be a convenient accessory who smiles for photos and stays quiet when you're never around." The argument that followed was unlike any they'd had before. Years of suppressed frustrations, unspoken resentments, and growing distance erupted in a torrent of words. William accused Kate of not understanding the weight of his responsibilities. Kate accused him of using those responsibilities as an excuse to avoid the hard work of maintaining their marriage. "You've changed, William," Kate said, tears streaming down her face. "You used to fight for us, for our time together. Now you just accept whatever the palace demands without question." "I haven't changed," William replied coldly. "I've grown up. I've accepted my destiny. Maybe it's time you did the same." The words hit Kate like a physical blow. After William left that morning, she sat on the edge of their bed and cried until she had no tears left. When the children asked why Mummy looked sad, she forced a smile and told them she was just tired. That afternoon, Kate took a long walk through the palace gardens, trying to sort through her thoughts. She loved William. She always would. But she was beginning to realize that love might not be enough to save a marriage that was being slowly suffocated by duty and protocol. She thought about her children, about the kind of mother she wanted to be, and the kind of example she wanted to set for them. George was already showing signs of the pressure that would define his future, asking questions about why Daddy was always working and why they couldn't do normal family things like other kids. As Kate walked past the rose garden where she and William had shared so many happy moments during their engagement, she made a decision that terrified her. She needed to have an honest conversation with William about their future, even if it meant facing truths neither of them wanted to acknowledge. That evening, Kate waited until the children were asleep before approaching William in his study. He was bent over papers, the same scene that had become so familiar over the past months. "William, we need to talk," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. He looked up with visible irritation. "Kate, I have to finish reviewing these briefings before tomorrow's meetings." "This is more important than any briefing," Kate said firmly. "Our marriage is falling apart, and if we don't address it now, there might not be anything left to save." For the next 2 hours, they talked more honestly than they had in months. Kate laid out her feelings of isolation and abandonment. She explained how she felt like a single mother most of the time, and how their children were starting to notice their father's absence. She talked about her fears for their future, and her growing certainty that something fundamental needed to change. William listened, really listened, for the first time in weeks. When Kate finished speaking, he was quiet for a long moment before responding. "I don't know how to be both the man you need and the prince the country expects," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every day, there are more demands, more expectations, more people telling me what I should do and how I should spend my time. I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how to fix it." It was the first crack in the armor William had been wearing, and Kate felt a surge of hope. But as they continued talking, it became clear that despite their love for each other, they were trapped in a system that seemed designed to tear them apart. William explained the new protocols that had been implemented, the increased security concerns, and the pressure from senior royals to maintain a more formal public presence. Kate listened with growing horror as she realized how little control they actually had over their own lives. "What if we said no?" Kate asked. "What if we stepped back? Took less prominent roles, focused on being a family first?" William's laugh was bitter. "You don't say no to the crown, Kate. You don't get to choose when you're born into this. But what about our children? What about their childhood? Are we going to sacrifice their happiness for appearances?" William didn't have an answer for that, and his silence spoke volumes. Over the following days, tension in the palace was palpable. Staff members whispered in corridors, and Kate noticed more frequent visits from senior palace officials. Camilla seemed to appear more often, always with a knowing smile and pointed comments about duty and sacrifice. One afternoon, while Kate was reading to Charlotte in the nursery, she overheard a conversation between Camilla and one of the private secretaries. They were discussing the situation and the need for firm guidance to ensure proper understanding of priorities. Kate's blood ran cold as she realized they were talking about her marriage, her family, her life as if it were a problem to be managed, rather than a relationship between two people who were struggling to find their way. That night, she confronted William about what she had overheard. "Are people talking about our marriage behind our backs?" she demanded. William's inability to meet her eyes told her everything she needed to know. "There are concerns," he admitted finally. "About your commitment to your role. About whether you understand what's expected of you." "Okay. Expected by whom? By you? Or by people who've never been married? Never had to balance love and duty?" "By everyone, Kate. By the institution, by the country, by history itself." Kate stared at her husband, seeing clearly for the first time how completely the system had captured him. William wasn't just fulfilling his duties. He had become them. The man she loved was disappearing, consumed by an institution that demanded everything and gave nothing back. "And what about what I expect?" Kate asked quietly. "What about what our children deserve? Don't we matter at all? William reached for her, but Kate stepped back. The gap between them felt insurmountable now, filled with expectations and protocols, and the weight of a 1,000-year-old institution that had no room for modern love or personal happiness. That night, Kate lay awake, planning a conversation she never thought she would need to have. She loved William, would always love him. But she was beginning to realize that sometimes love meant knowing when to let go. The next morning, Kate made a phone call that would change everything. She called her sister Pippa and asked her to come to the palace for an urgent conversation. For the first time since her wedding day, Kate was ready to consider a future that might not include the man she had thought she would love forever. As she waited for Pippa to arrive, Kate stood at the same window where this had all begun, holding another letter. This one wasn't from the palace officials. This one was from her own lawyers, outlining options she never thought she would need to consider. The sun cast the same long shadows across the garden. But everything else had changed. Kate was no longer the woman who had trembled while reading that first letter. She was stronger now, clearer about what she needed and what she was willing to sacrifice for it. And for the first time in months, despite everything falling apart around her, Kate felt like she could breathe again. The day Kate had been dreading finally arrived on a gray April morning. She had spent weeks in quiet preparation, speaking with lawyers, making arrangements for the children, and gathering the strength she would need for what was to come. The conversation with William could no longer be delayed. She found him in the library, a room that had once been their sanctuary where they would spend quiet evenings together reading or simply talking. Now it felt like neutral territory, the perfect place for a discussion that would change everything. "William, please sit down," Kate said softly. "We need to talk about our future." Something in her tone made him look up sharply from the documents he had been reviewing. When he saw the serious expression on her face and the folder in her hands, understanding dawned in his eyes. "Kate, whatever you're thinking, we can work through it," he said quickly, setting aside his papers and giving her his full attention for the first time in months. "Can we?" Kate asked, settling into the chair across from him. "Because I've been trying to work through it for months, and nothing has changed. If anything, it's gotten worse." Kate opened the folder and pulled out several papers. Her hands were steady now, steadier than they had been in weeks. She had found a calm center in the storm of her emotions, a place where she could think clearly about what was best for everyone involved. "I've been speaking with legal advisors," she began, "about separation procedures, custody arrangements, and what it would mean for the children." William's face went white. "You're talking about divorce?" "I'm talking about saving what's left of our family," Kate replied gently. "William, look at us. Really look at what we've become. We're strangers living in the same house, going through the motions of a marriage that died months ago." William stood abruptly and began pacing the room. "This is temporary, Kate. The pressure will ease once we get through this transition period." The palace officials said. "The palace officials aren't married to you, William." "I am. Or was." Kate's voice broke slightly on the last words, but she pressed on. "I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when our children are asking why Mummy cries when she thinks no one is watching." That stopped William in his tracks. "The children know? Children always know more than we think they do. George asked me last week if you still loved us. How am I supposed to answer that when I don't even know myself?" William sank back into his chair, the weight of Kate's words settling over him like a heavy blanket. "Of course I love you. I love all of you. That's never changed. Love isn't enough anymore, William. Love without time, without attention, without partnership, isn't love. It's just a memory of what we used to have." For the next hour, they talked with a honesty that had been missing from their relationship for too long. William tried to argue, to make promises about changing his schedule and prioritizing their family. But Kate had heard those promises before, and they both knew that the forces pulling William away from his family were stronger than his individual will to resist them. "What about the children?" William asked desperately. "This will destroy them. What's destroying them is watching their parents become strangers," Kate replied firmly. "What's destroying them is seeing their father treat their mother with polite indifference." Children need to see what healthy relationships look like, not learn that marriage means suffering in silence. Kate had thought through every aspect of what she was proposing. She didn't want to take the children away from their father or from their royal heritage. She wanted to create a situation where they could have real relationships with both parents, where they could grow up seeing that love and respect were more important than duty and obligation. "I'm not asking you to choose between us and the crown," Kate said softly. "I'm asking you to choose what kind of father you want to be. You can fulfill your royal duties and still be present for your children. But you can't do that while trying to maintain the pretense of a marriage that's making us both miserable." As they talked, Kate could see the war happening behind William's eyes. Part of him knew she was right, could see that their relationship had become unsustainable. But another part of him was terrified of the scandal, the public reaction, the disappointment from his family, and the institution he had been groomed to serve. "My father will never forgive me," William said finally. "The palace will see this as a failure of duty." "Your father survived his own divorce and found happiness again," Kate reminded him. "And your duty is to your children first, not to an institution that sees your family as expendable." Just as their conversation was reaching its most intense point, they heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Moments later, Camilla appeared in the doorway, claiming she was looking for Charles but clearly having overheard enough to understand what was happening. "Oh dear," Camilla said, though her expression showed anything but surprise or distress. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Actually, you are," Kate said firmly, standing to face her. "This is a private conversation between my husband and me." But Camilla didn't leave. Instead, she stepped fully into the room, her smile sharp and knowing. "Perhaps this is exactly the right time for me to be here. William, you know how important this period is for your reputation and your future role. Surely any major decisions can wait until after the summer tour." Kate felt a surge of anger unlike anything she had experienced before. In that moment, she realized that Camilla had been aware of their problems all along, had perhaps even been working to ensure that the pressure on their marriage would continue to increase. "Get out," Kate said quietly. But her voice carried such authority that even Camilla looked surprised. "This is my home, my family, and my decision. You have no place in this conversation." "Now, Kate," Camilla began, her tone patronizing. "I said get out." Kate's voice was stronger now, filled with months of suppressed frustration and newfound clarity about who had been working against her happiness. "You've done enough damage to this family." For a moment, the three of them stood frozen in tableau. Then William, perhaps seeing his wife's strength clearly for the first time in months, stepped forward. "She's right," he said quietly. "This is our decision to make, not yours." Camilla's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Of course. I'll leave you to your discussion." As she turned to go, Kate caught a glimpse of something that made her blood run cold. Despite the setback, Camilla was still smiling, as if Kate's decision to leave was exactly what she had been hoping for. After Camilla left, William and Kate sat in silence for several minutes. The interruption had clarified something important for both of them. They were surrounded by people who had their own agendas, their own ideas about what the royal family should look like, and none of those people seemed to care about their actual happiness or the well-being of their children. "I don't want to hurt you," Kate said finally. "I don't want to hurt the children or cause a scandal. But I can't sacrifice my entire life, my chance at happiness, to maintain an image that isn't even real anymore." William looked at his wife, really looked at her, and saw someone who had been slowly disappearing under the weight of expectations that were never hers to carry. He saw the mother of his children, the woman who had brought joy and normalcy to his life, the person who had loved him not for his title or his destiny but for who he was as a man. "What do you need from me?" he asked quietly. Kate's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of relief that he was finally listening. "I need you to understand that this isn't about not loving you. I need you to work with me to create a future where our children can have both parents in their lives in a real way. I need you to stop seeing this as a failure and start seeing it as a chance for all of us to be happier." They spent the rest of the day talking through practical arrangements. Kate would move to a private residence with the children, close enough for regular visits but far enough away to escape the constant scrutiny of palace life. William would have regular, scheduled time with the children. Time that would be protected from royal duties, except in genuine emergencies. The announcement would be made in a way that emphasized their mutual respect and their commitment to co-parenting. They would not make public statements criticizing each other or airing their grievances. They would put their children's welfare above everything else. As evening approached, Kate went to say goodbye to the rooms that had been her home. She stood once more at the window where this journey had begun, but now the view looked different. The shadows were still there, but they no longer felt oppressive. Instead, they seemed to offer places of rest and reflection. That night, Kate tucked each of her children into bed and explained, in age-appropriate ways, that Mummy and Daddy would be living in different places but that they both loved them very much and would always be their parents. The children had questions, some tears, but also a sense of relief that the tension they had been feeling would finally be resolved. As Kate prepared for her last night in the palace, she felt a complex mixture of sadness and liberation. She was grieving the end of her marriage, the death of dreams she had once held dear, but she was also breathing freely for the first time in months, knowing that she was choosing courage over comfort, authenticity over appearance. William came to their room one last time. They sat together on the bed where they had shared so many intimate moments, talking quietly about their hopes for the future and their commitment to remaining a family even if they could no longer be married. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" William asked. "There's nothing to forgive," Kate replied. "We both did our best in an impossible situation. Now, we're choosing to do better." The next morning, Kate left the palace with her children and her dignity intact. As their car pulled away, she didn't look back at the building that had been her prison for so many months. Instead, she looked forward, toward a future that was uncertain but filled with possibility. Later, the palace would issue a statement about the separation. The public would speculate and gossip. Other members of the royal family would have their opinions and their reactions. But Kate had learned something important during her months of struggle. The only opinions that truly mattered were those of the people who genuinely loved her and wanted her happiness. As she settled into her new home with her children that evening, Kate felt something she hadn't experienced in a very long time: peace. She had chosen love. Not the desperate clinging kind that sacrifices everything for appearance, but the brave kind that sometimes means letting go so that everyone can grow. And somewhere in the palace, as Camilla watched the news coverage with satisfaction, and William tried to understand how his life had changed so completely, Kate was reading bedtime stories to her children in their new home, finally free to be the mother and woman she had always wanted to be.